Good afternoon, and welcome to the Voice of Wisdom. With over 60 years of experience as an investment banker, entrepreneur, investment analyst, economist, and venture capitalist, Morty Davis is Wall Street and capitalism personified. The over 400 companies for which he has raised more than $3 billion over the years have created a countless number of jobs and exciting new products. Through the Voice of Wisdom, Mr. Davis explores, analyzes, and debates the most topical political, economic, and social issues facing our world today. Joining Mr. Davis today as we kick off 2025 is Len Carter. Len is an investment banker, business consultant, and private investor. And now, Mr. Davis and Mr. Carter.
Welcome back. A lot of holidays. I missed a couple of sessions as a result, but I'm delighted to be back with you, my favorite people in the whole world. You are great. You send me such wonderful insights, compliments, criticisms. Sometimes I want to punch you in the nose right there when I get it. And then I think about it and I say, I don't agree with that, but I start to think of the validity or the merit of some of the things that the criticisms point to, and it improves my balance, my knowledge, my even my fairness and my judgment. So, like students improve their teachers' knowledge and wisdom and even attitude. You do that for me, and I love you all. Nobody's really that nasty, maybe once in a while, and I probably deserve it. Anyway, before I start on the news of the day the current events that we inevitably wind up talking about, because nobody else is interested. News is only bad stuff. Good stuff doesn't get the headlines. So I like to, just as I was motivated to write this book that you see in front of Your Happiness Guaranteed or Your Misery Back, and the subtitle on the bottom is How to Be Happy No Matter What, was motivated and inspired by my goal, my desire to make all of you, my listeners, happy, my children, my friends, the people I like, and hopefully all the citizens of our country, all the inhabitants of the United States, and all the people of the world. Because if we were all happier, we'd do much less damage to each other, because we'd have less anger that seems to be prevalent, and if anything, in recent years growing. The disagreements and disinformation between our fellow citizens has never been more apparent and more counterproductive. So I like to start by, before we engage in this bad news, aggravating stuff that we discuss, give you a couple of very brief ideas of how to be happy. First of all, always, no matter what, have hope. Be optimistic. See the future as offering you great possibilities and hopefully fun things, good things, a lot of joy and rewards tangible rewards, quality rewards, meaningful, uplifting happiness. So the best way to do that in brief is always be optimistic, and most importantly, don't let discouraging events uh, infest your mind perennially or even often. You know, right away, move to some positive thoughts, positive actions, and most importantly, have a purpose in life. That gives you, if you're always working towards a useful goal, that's gratifying to the extent you help your family, your loved ones, your fellow man. I promise you, it's very gratifying. The best money that I ever achieved and acquired and used was what I gave away to build schools, hospitals, educational institutions, research and development of new drugs, all things that help other people. And the money's gone. I don't have it anymore, but I see the benefits and I keep getting rewards throughout my lifetime, as opposed to all the other money that I spend for good, happy times, like going to a great restaurant, um, buying a yacht or a plane. Or I have to tell you, when my fellow graduates at Harvard Business School or contemporaries on Wall Street achieved the kind of success that I had achieved, the first thing they all did, seemingly, was they went out and built mansions for themselves, or acquired their own private jets and their own big, beautiful yachts that slept 12 or 10 or whatever. I never sought those kind of, and they're beautiful and they're impressive. But my desire was to really, if I could, help my fellow human beings. First with my immediate family, my children, my grandchildren, my extended family, my great-grandchildren, my friends, my relatives, my fellow Americans. And that's given me the greatest satisfaction and rewards than any material thing or toy to play with. And these are really the things that they buy. The jets, they're useful. The yachts are fun. The mansions are impressive and even enviable, but they're momentary, temporary, and if you get to use them several times, and they're there for you all the time, they don't provide the gratification and the fulfillment and rewards that helping your fellow, most importantly, people close to you that you love and admire, and all the people that you can have a positive effect on and add to their security, their stability, their contentment. So find a purpose that really is something you would hope exists or would have been achieved, and work towards it. Cancer cures, medical research, helping children that need help. There's nothing that I ever remembered doing where I saw a child that was either maimed or crippled or born, uh, what's the word I want to use?
Birth
Disabled.
defect? A birth defect of some kind?
Yeah, with defects and in need of assistance and helping them overcome or at least cope in an effective way with whatever disablement or shortcoming they have. There's nothing at all, I promise you, that gives you long-term, perennial satisfaction. So enough said, except that one of the fastest way and best way I can tell you, promise you that you can enjoy the happiness that we all pursue, that our Constitution or Bill of Rights says, our forefathers directed us to provide life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that this book will help you in that pursuit and actually having a big impact in achieving that happiness. So I know that from the experience and the feedback I get from the people who have bought the book, and I'm so confident that you too will appreciate it, and in fact exploit its wisdom and benefit from its suggestions and teachings, that you will appreciate this book. And I am so sure of that I promise you the best deal you could ever get in any transaction. And that is that if you're not really happy, or maybe that's the wrong word to use about happiness, but really pleased with what this book teaches you in terms of ideas to improve your daily life, humor, everything that we all want to see better in our lives every day throughout all our years. Then you send me the purchase prior ticket of your or the bill for your the charge for your what you paid for the book, and if it was a gift, if you know what was paid for it, even though you didn't pay for it, if you send me some information evidencing that somebody bought it for you and paid for it, I will refund that total amount of money, and you can keep the book, but not only refund the total that was paid for it, but double what you paid for it. So I don't know of a better deal. Most of the best deals on television say, if you're not happy with the product, we're so sure you like it. But if you're not, send it back, the jar or the product, to my company, to me, and I will refund your purchase price. And you can even keep the product and use it. You don't, even if you used up all of the supplements or medicine that you paid for, you don't have to. If you just return the purchase ticket and the purchase price, and send it to me, I will send you double that amount back. Okay, go out and buy it or get a friend to give it to you, or tell them that would be a great gift for you to receive. Everybody who's received it has, I'm told, by one chief executive of Fortune 400, 500, 100 company, that sent it out as a gift, said he's never had a response, such a positive response, both immediately and beyond the immediate period when he got the gift, as he has gotten from this book, this gift. And that goes months and even years later. Well, not years later, it's not out that long. So, but well beyond the date of the receipt of the book. So without further discussion of happiness, I don't want to make it too happy. You'll be out doing other things. So let's get on with the podcast, this week's podcast. It must be 6:30 Wednesday evening, because that's when I appear with my guests or my cohorts, and we offer you whatever wisdom, advice, guidance that we think would be useful and enhance the quality of your life. And today we're blessed and fortunate. I am especially fortunate to have, what's your name again? Len Carter with me, a true genius. Every school, every advanced degree he received, first in electrical engineering, then at graduate school for engineering, then at Harvard Business School. He's been at the top of his class and received special recognition. So we're privileged to have him design the program, ask the questions, raise the issues, and we will discuss them, and you hopefully will enjoy or benefit from whatever we can convey to you in a functional, positive way. So Len, would you launch? And thank you so much for agreeing to appear again.
Sure, my pleasure. Good to be back in the new year. First show of 2025, and already a series of interesting new topics to discuss. So why don't we start off with probably the biggest headline of the last week or so, which is the death of the 39th President of the United States, James Earl Carter, Jimmy Carter, no relation to Len Carter.
Are you trying to deny the relationship because you don't like him, or for some other reason?
Yeah, just no connection on the family tree. Yes, a Southern Democrat, Annapolis graduate, nuclear engineer, peanut farmer, and 39th president. Won a very close election in '76 against Gerald Ford, when Ford was the first president to become president without ever being elected, and then ran for re-election and very narrowly lost. So coming into the White House at a time, the late 70s, when we saw a lot of political turmoil overseas, economic stagflation in the United States, and
Stagflation, just to define stagflation, that's a combination of recession and inflation at the same time.
yeah,
The worst of all possible economic
stagnation and inflation. Because usually when you
status.
have inflation, you have a heated economy causing inflation. Stagnation usually results in lower inflation, but here was this time when you had the worst of both worlds. You had a stagnant economy and high inflation, mostly precipitated by the oil embargoes and the emergence of OPEC and the rising of energy, and the world wasn't prepared for that in terms of transportation and cars and economic
It wasn't
usage
just,
of it.
I should point out, you're too young to have lived through it, I believe. But I lived through it, and it wasn't just the inflation, the rise of the cost of oil, but the impossible, unbelievable rise from $1 a barrel to
30.
1,000%.
In 1979, it hit $30 a barrel in nominal terms, which today would be way, way more, but that's a 30 times increase. That is quite significant.
Is that 300% or 3,000%?
Way more than that. Yeah.
3,000%?
Maybe
anyway,
more
it
than
was
that. Yeah.
the biggest jump ever in an essential good. There are other things that if they go up, you can do without, or you can at least buy less of. But gasoline to drive your car to work or to work with in your job, it's essential. You have no option. So it was.
And we didn't have high speed telecommunications to homes then, so people couldn't work remotely.
Yeah.
They basically had to commute, and most people commute by car.
Yeah, and also employers wouldn't give you the option. You had to be in the office.
Yeah, I mean it's
or in the factory,
right? Because it was not even possible,
right,
let alone be given the option. It wasn't even possible to really be productive in any place other than the office. So, we had a very difficult. He faced a very difficult economic situation. Foreign and following.
He faced, or did he inspire it or cause it?
I guess that's part of the question. I mean, you could argue some of it was probably a result. When he let the Shah of Iran into the country after the Shah got overturned and was sick, cancer, he let him into the country, and that inspired the takeover of the embassy in Tehran. And I don't know how many hostages were held for 444 days during Carter's administration.
I don't know if that was a sequence. I'm not sure that was a sequence. I think he got sick after the Khomeini. After he was overthrown.
Yes, he was overthrown, got sick, and then Carter let him into the country for treatment, and that infuriated.
But earlier, the way you said it, it implied that his sickness caused the overthrow of his government.
No.
Okay.
No, he was overthrown first, but it was his being allowed into the country.
There was a revolution against his kingship.
Yes. And then
against his leadership.
Yes. Right. But by being led into the country, that infuriated the Islamic regime, Khomeini, that took over, and they seized the embassy and held the hostages. Carter tried to rescue them. It was a massive failure.
Just to get it straight, I lived through that period. His sickness had very little to do with their anger. It it was our supporter.
I believe that's what I said, Morty. What I said was Carter allowed Pahlavi into the country to be treated.
I said it had nothing to do.
Why did he let him into the country?
Because all the leaders of all the countries come to America when they get really sick.
But he allowed him in.
But that was not the inspiration. By the time he came for that, the Khomeini was in charge.
Correct.
So,
but I don't believe they took the embassy until
but they were
came
angry.
Into the country.
They were angry because we supported his continuation.
Correct.
So that's what they were angry about.
It was a poke in the eye when they let him into the country.
Okay, I lived through that period. I don't think that was what
it
inspired
the anger. Okay, I mean we can
you
debate.
You get angry when you take over the country, and the United States supports the guy you took it over from.
Right. And one of the ways that they supported him was letting him into the country for treatment.
That was way later.
All right. I mean, I can show you the text that I read, and we can debate that.
That shows you how much misinformation there is out there. Because I remember I lived through it. You know, you could read about other things about the Second World War. That's reframed in a way that's not true. Or why we're in Vietnam or in Afghanistan. You know, to make it acceptable.
So you don't think that letting him into the country for treatment had anything to do with further antagonizing the government of Iraq?
It was long after.
Okay, I don't believe so, but we can't debate that here without some other information. So let's keep going. So
I believe you read it because people have different arguments about facts today. I mean, not even saying things that are close to the truth, and accepted. So just because it's written,
I mean,
doesn't mean
that's a hard one to debate because it's hard for if whatever news agencies or reporters wrote that, you say they're wrong. Whatever facts or information they based it on, maybe they are wrong. But
no, I mean, I lived through the period.
So did they. So did they, the ones that were writing it.
No, the ones writing it are writing it.
How do you know that?
After the fact.
How do you know that they didn't base it on primary sources of the time? Newspaper reports.
I don't know, maybe.
Yes, you don't know that.
But I'm saying
we can
even
debate that. But
you're right. Even
really
today,
go anywhere.
They're writing about things that January 6th. They're writing that, and almost half the nation supports Trump's view that it was
peaceful protest.
Stolen. That is, the election was stolen, and their behavior was just
tourists,
terrorists. It does know the difference between tourists and terrorists. Okay.
So the broader picture is during his 4 years, and then he was defeated in a landslide in 1980 by Ronald Reagan, and then.
But the way you headline it for me is number one question: do you view Jimmy Carter as good or bad?
Right. Well, that's what I'm getting to. Is his legacy is a combination of the 4 years he was in office, and then he was the oldest president to die, 100 years old. So he was not in office for 50 years. So, and did a lot of things after that. Some we'll debate, good or bad. So the issue is broadly Jimmy Carter's legacy.
Is he good or bad?
Yeah. So why don't you start with your with your thesis on, whether you think that he was in the overall effective or ineffective or helpful or unhelpful to the world.
I think the brief answer, very brief answer, is the famous response that Ben-Gurion gave to the media subsequent to Israel being established as a country by the UN, when they asked him, how are things going, how are things? And he said, in one word, good, and two words, not good. So that's what I say about Jimmy Carter. In one word, good, and two words, not good. And especially during his tenure that I lived through, it was horrendous, that stagflation. Interest rates, government bonds, U.S. treasuries hit 18% interest. Shows you how much they had to pay to sell those bonds and how treacherous the world thought the U.S. bonds and economy was. So it was terrible. But in total, if you measure the man and his wife, his total life, once he finished his presidency, he really dedicated his life to doing good, to building homes, literally with his eye, because he was also a carpenter, a talented carpenter. So he and his wife literally were on a job helping to build homes.
That's what Habitat for Humanity did.
Habitat.
Literally, lots of pictures I remember of that, of whenever they showed had a hammer in his hand.
And right, and supervising the legitimacy of democratic elections. He tried to add stability to the world of the leadership of the world, and provide. He couldn't cure all the ills of the world, but providing homes, housing for people is one of the best ways of, and he did it literally, he and his wife himself. So he was excellent that way. But like all of the biblical greats that we admire, that we look up to, that we refer to, none of us as human beings are pure good or evil. Joseph's brothers, Jacob's 12 sons, 11 sons other than Joseph, were supposedly great in many ways, but they were horrible in what they did to Joseph and what they reported back to their father, and the pain that they inflicted on their father for years and years. Initially, that he was killed, they brought him Joseph's coat with blood on it, the blood of an animal, and they sold him, and they threw him down a pit that had poison snakes and all kind of, and just at that moment, he didn't get killed instantly. Some Egyptian troop was passing through, that connected to the government, I believe, and they rescued him and enslaved him, and he went on to do great things. And King David is admired as one of the great kings of all time, the kings of the Israelis, and history says that he arranged for the husband of a woman who he fell in love with to be drafted into the army. I don't know if it was called drafted in those days, and who got killed so he could have that woman for himself, which is about the worst thing you could think of. And nevertheless, because of other things that he did, his writings of Psalms that he inspires us all with, even to this very day, he's considered somebody very special and very much looked up to. So we are all more than good or bad. We're a combination of the ones that are really to be admired are the ones that are more good or overwhelmingly good, and the ones that we sort of develop an anger at and a hatred for are the ones like Adolf Hitler or Stalin that were vicious, hateful, destructive, mean. So I always think of the Old Testament as being wonderful in the sense that it didn't make our forefathers, its main characters, our heroes in retrospect, that we look up to as saints, as sinless. Every one of them committed things that we would not say enhances their legacy or their reputation. So why is that good? Because we don't have to live up to some image of perfection that we can realize. Even the ones we admire the most and then God made special to us had the vulnerabilities and the what's the word I'm looking for? The liabilities that the rest of us have.
So
is he good or bad? I still go back to.
So let's take the negatives first, and then we can, because I wasn't as familiar with some of the achievements that he did. His most of the popular legacy is just a poor economy during his tenure, and then years after he left office, writing this book about the Middle East and being highly critical of Israel, and being accused of being anti-Semitic and not being terribly popular, with Jews and Israelis. In fact, they say in the 76 election, he got a very large percentage of Jews. If he just had gotten a little bit less, he would have lost. If they went for Ford instead of Carter, that's how close the election was.
He only won, I don't know if you realize this, kind of miraculously, because he was not a well-known figure. He was not a leader.
He was an outsider. That's how he ran as an outsider.
He followed Nixon's disaster.
Right.
So the Republican, anybody who would have run against the Republican candidate at that time was going to win.
Well, it was pretty close, though.
So it shows you that even with that, he wasn't that popular. So he didn't win because of his popularity. He wasn't like an outstanding governor or an outstanding Democratic leader. Nobody would have thought of him as the one that's going to be the next president. But they needed somebody to step up and, in general, politicians were deemed like Nixon to
Right.
be terrible, and
and particularly Ford, who pardoned Nixon, and that was not a terribly popular thing for a lot of voters. So,
and a lot of them didn't like that car either. The Ford.
So, but here's some interesting things did, and this is an article I was reading from Haaretz, the Israeli paper.
That's your problem. You read too much.
Yeah. But
you remember this guy? He said, everywhere I drove, I saw these signs put up. Not signs, billboards put up. Smoking is terrible, bad for your health.
Yeah.
Smoking is dangerous. Smoking is it maligns smoking, and I love my cigarette. So I finally decided to give up reading. So it's the same with this.
So one of the achievements that they talk about and is the establishment of the Holocaust Museum in Washington,
Right.
which these days, Carter
was he in favor of the Holocaust?
But what they in a time today where there's rising anti-Semitic attitudes and Holocaust denialism. In fact, they cite here in the U.S., 40% of adults in this study, in this survey they did, 40% of adults could not identify what Auschwitz was. And almost half of young adults could not name a single concentration camp or ghetto. So a lot of people believe, just see if you agree with it, that was one of his most important legacies, was establishing that museum, because that's something that will live way beyond any home that he builds for Habitat for Humanity. Although, on the other side, he planned and made the U.S. Holocaust Museum, and then complained that, quote, too many Jews were involved.
Really?
Yeah.
I never heard that before.
So that was one thing. The second thing that people talk about was that
the Jews can't get favorable reviews even when they're favorable. Unmitigated blessing, an unmitigated favoritism.
Is that he allowed in, so during, the second thing they talk about was that he was actually, in 1979, with Carter's encouragement, the United States passed the Israeli Anti-Boycott Act, which allows individual U.S. states to make it against the law to boycott Israel or companies that do business with Israel, and make it a federal crime to boycott Israel.
And he was still president?
He did it in 1979. He was behind that. Again, then years later, he writes this book.
Both good and bad. Even after he did good things and left the presidency and did wonderful things, he was very counterproductive. Israelis felt in his attitude towards.
Yeah, that was. That's where he gets a lot of criticism, is from that, the book, and his position on how the Middle East should be dealt with. He was responsible for the original peace negotiations at Camp David when Sadat came in. Here's a picture of him with Begin and Sadat when they started those efforts. So I guess that's a good point, that, like anything else, is yin and yang with people.
I didn't realize till this moment something that should be realized. Surprisingly, during all this rallies and attacks on symbolic Jewish institutions. I don't, including synagogues and other holy places, Jewish cemeteries. I'm not aware of any Holocaust museums that were attacked. Maybe they were, and I missed it.
Yeah, no, I haven't heard of any.
That's interesting. I guess they killed 6 million, killing the museums.
Here's a follow-up thought, observation, and question. So, given that Carter's legacy, has this positive and negative attributes, some, people more vehement on both sides. We saw, recently that in Nassau County, so right after President Carter's death, President Biden, which is pretty common, called for flags at federal facilities to be lowered to half staff, as out of respect for the death of a former president. In fact, later this week, the markets are closed as they always are after a president dies, out of respect for the president. So
I think this is the longest tribute I've ever seen.
it's a long time, yeah, because he died a long time.
That
is a long.
It'd be 120 by now.
Yeah. So in Nassau County, Executive Bruce Blakeman, a Republican, did not
He's a good friend of mine.
lower the flags.
He's been to my house for fundraising several times.
He refused to lower the flags at Nassau facilities. He didn't say why, but he didn't do it. Later, a few days later, maybe a week or so later, they were lowered. Maybe because of, pressure. So what do you think about that, making a statement, about doing that? Do you think that was the right thing for someone in a position like that to do, when, again, not to explain why, but I suspect why was he probably wasn't too thrilled with Carter's legacy, as we were, talking about some of the negative things that came back, particularly as it relates to anti-Semitism and what some people perceive as his, views on the Middle East. So is it appropriate to make a statement against a political view by, in my view, disrespecting the president by not lowering the flags to half-mast?
I never agree to being disrespectful of somebody who passed away, even though I may feel that, and in some cases that's not true either, because of some terrorist or some Middle East Arab decides to wipe out a bunch of innocent people, whether it's an ISIS group or some other group, jihad group. I don't think it's disrespectful.
Right, to lower a flag for them.
To be what?
To lower a flag for them.
To be disrespectful of them.
Right.
But in general, it serves no purpose, and in fact, it calls attention to our meanness.
I was surprised that he would do that. I mean, I've met Blakeman at your house. He seems like a stand-up guy.
Yeah.
I think he realized it probably wasn't a really smart political move. You don't really get a lot. I mean, it's not like Carter was an ISIS terrorist, I mean, he's a former president, even if you don't agree with some of the things he may have done or written, he's still a former president.
Bruce is a Trump loyalist, and it's not beyond Donald Trump to behave in.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's unfortunate we've gotten to that point where, just because you don't like someone's politics, you don't respect them.
uh, Trump and some of his followers, many of his followers, do it for living people, even living heroes,
Right.
And maligning them.
True. Although Trump is going to the funeral. He said he's going to go.
Yeah, that is in favor of going to funerals for
Democrats.
For
Democrats.
we would go to Smith's funeral. They can't help. You can't wait to go.
That's
already.
right. That's right. So
you know who Smith is?
Jack Smith.
What?
The Jack Smith, the special prosecutor. Yeah. So I think that was, not a smart move, and very quickly realized it wasn't a smart move, and so lowered the flags. But interesting that we see stuff like that happen. It's sad, actually. I think it's actually unfortunate.
You know what it says in the Jewish teachings? How should Jews behave when they arrive at different countries? And it says, the advice it gives, the guidance it gives, that it instructs us that we comply with the law of the country unless it's contrary to behavior that's not allowed by our Jewish laws. So there's no reason to do that. I guess what he wants to do is what dislike or seemingly hatred he has for somebody like Carter, and based on his post tenure as president, a lot of Jews were angry at Carter's support of anti-Israel.
Right. Right, particularly in the book that he wrote.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What did he write?
I forgot the name of it, but it was a book about, Israel, implying that Israel's an apartheid state and things like that.
Yeah.
But still, does that rise to the level of that type of disrespect? But
no, I'm saying during his lifetime, and even after the period of reasonable period after his death, you can criticize them and go back to, but why do it at the moment of
right.
So it alienates.
Right. I mean, he's a politician, right? So politicians don't want to alienate people. Right. That's the number one goal of a politician. Yeah. Don't alienate.
No,
particularly ones that vote.
Right. And what politician doesn't deserve to be maligned and hated? Even the good ones.
That's true.
No other group has passed laws that protect them from criminal activity. I don't know if you're familiar with the fact that congressmen are able to do things that others are serving jail time for, in the terms of using inside information to benefit in the stock market. In other words, they would be, many of them, at a committee meeting to award some major contract to Boeing or Lockheed or Raytheon, major defense contractors, and before the meeting's over, they run to the phone and buy 10,000 shares of X share, and by the time it's announced to the public, they're selling it, or they're already up 30-40%. That's outrageous.
Yeah, they're selling now.
Or somebody like Thomas, the Supreme Court judge, who gets every kind of benefit and is immune from, it's just not right. And even now with Trump prosecution, he says, even till this day, even this morning, he says, I did nothing wrong. It's still then. They're still going after me. They're still prosecuting me. The Democrats are vicious, mean. they're finding that there's nothing wrong, and I don't know what they're doing. It's just, unfair, unreasonable, intolerable persecution. The fact that he got 90 convictions,
He's found guilty by a jury.
all by impartial, supposedly impartial juries.
Right. I mean, the argument now is with that is the immunity decision and how. But I think it's hard to say that hush money stuff was done as in his capacity as president. So if it was done not in the capacity as president, it's not really covered under immunity.
Yeah.
So that's the argument.
I mean, they were all criminal, violations, and supposedly we're all equal under the law,
right,
for good or bad. And to me, he's the greatest genius of all time, selling, marketing, that he was able to evade 92
Indictments.
All of which were by, I say, impartial juries, because the defense checks out the jurors as well as the prosecutor and makes sure, to the extent it's possible, that there's no bias in favor or against the defendant.
Yeah, I mean, in a grand jury, it's a little more in favor of the prosecution, but in a trial, for sure.
Yeah.
So, anyway, we have just a couple of minutes left. So,
really,
yes.
When you're having fun, time flies. I didn't realize we were so far along.
Yes. So, why don't we just answer one kind of broad question, which you raised in your discussion of happiness in the very beginning, which
Who
is
raised it?
you.
Oh, well.
And talking about what we should do and help fellow man and things. So we saw 14 people killed, 35 injured in the New Year's attack in New Orleans. The Cybertruck explodes, killing the driver and injuring 7 others in front of the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. How can we keep ourselves from killing each other in 2025?
That's a good question. Even husbands and wives, I think the major killings are domestic. Yeah. So I would say what I said in my intro on happiness. I said we should have a purpose, an idealistic purpose. And one of the idealistic purposes that would serve the country well, the people well, and should be instituted, should have been instituted years ago, and should be instituted expeditiously, promptly, is to take control of the availability of the weapons that are used and available to everybody, criminal, crazy people.
Yes, although in this case, both these attacks didn't involve guns. The first guy drove a car up on the sidewalk and mowed down, 14 people.
The first one did involve guns after the fact. He shot cops, I think.
I think he was, but the people he killed were from being run over with the truck, with the car.
I think, didn't he hit 2 policemen?
He might have. He was killed by the cops when the cops shot him, but I don't think anyone died as a result of guns.
I'm not limiting it to guns. The availability of explosives.
Well,
he had explosives.
That's true, but those were a lot of IEDs. They were, like improvised.
Maybe you
it's
can't
like
you can't.
But I think the point that I agree with is if people have a purpose and people have a connection and aren't isolated and alienated, their desire to kill people goes down.
Yeah.
Right? They don't want to kill.
Yeah.
Like, why? he got radicalized by ISIS, and the theme you see a lot of times with these school shooters or other lone wolves that kill people is they're like not connected to the world in some enough, and so like why would you want to kill people if you were like if you had feeling and had a reason and connection to the world, your family, to whatever, you wouldn't want to kill people.
Yeah,
so
a lot of them are angry.
I think
the
that's
leadership, at the governance.
right.
So
Because this was a really tough one. I mean, yes, the police should have had better blockades and barriers so that they couldn't. And the New Orleans police is being criticized for, you know, having the physical openness where the car could go up on the sidewalk. If they had barriers there, the car couldn't drive up around and get into the Bourbon Street.
one of the major
But when people want to do bad stuff, they're going to do bad stuff.
Len, one of the major roles of government, if not the major role of government, is to keep its people safe and do all it can to achieve that safety for its people. And we don't. You know, we constantly have children and school teachers innocent, you know, without any arms, without any protection, being slaughtered. And we do nothing. The day afterwards, we talk a lot about it. What we do all the time after one of these events is agree that we should have prayer on behalf of the
Thoughts and prayers.
Prayers on behalf of the victims and their families, their parents, and brothers and sisters. And there's no, what somebody say, there's absolutely nothing we can do about it. But we know that's not true because a country like Australia had a mass slaughter like we had in '95, and they said instantly changed every law and made it impossible to get guns, or you got a gun, it took a year. You went through the police department. They trained you. It took safety measures. They cared. They showed that safety. And in the United States, 70% of Americans are in favor of these kind of precautionary measures and limitations. And that's just the average citizen. 100% of the people who lose their family or their kids to these events are in favor, have been urging, do something about this epidemic. It's really an epidemic because it's more than one every single day of the year in the United States. It's incredible. It's unbelievable. It's inconceivable that we would let this kind of behavior be perpetrated without taking strong action. And it's the Congress and the Senate at the behest and at the support, the bribery, or if you will, or the tremendous influence of the National Rifle Association that won't even let the first law, because they say if you let the first law, that's the beginning of the end of what the Constitution guarantees.
Coming to take your guns away.
Yeah. Not only that, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but after every shooting, you'd think the next day there would be a behavior to take guns away they have record-breaking sales because the NRA says, you better go out and buy your gun now because this is going to inspire the government to introduce laws that limit your ability to get guns. So in a way, the best thing that could happen for the NRA is more shootings. And their motto, it's only people they kill, not guns.
Guns.
You know,
don't kill people.
Guns
People
don't
kill
kill,
people.
and you can't argue with that. Without people, they don't run off. Although who knows, with AI, they'll be able to do it without people.
So, okay, thank you. We will
Does that
finish up and
use up our time?
we are.
Okay. Anyway, God bless you all. Thank you for joining me and Len this week and every week at 6:30, Wednesday 6:30 p.m. in the evening. And I look forward to being with you again next week and all the weeks following that, as long as I survive, and then hopefully somebody even better and more competent than I am, more inspiring or entertaining than I am, will continue this very important podcast. So have a great week, have a great day, have a great every day of your life. You, your children, and all your loved ones. God bless you. See you next week. Bye.